Great, we're live. So we're live with people who are going to be able to join us online, as well as live with our very lively in-person audience here at the Siena Art Institute. So it's great to have you all here, and thank you all for joining us for tonight's conversation with our artist in residence, Shelley Jordon. And we have not only a talk here, but we also have our open studio, which will be a chance to see the work that Shelley has been creating during her month-long residency here, as well as our international young artists who are our participants for this autumn here. So we have our mini studio spaces here on the ground floor, as well as our clay arts downstairs, and Shelley's studio is upstairs. So there's lots to explore also after our presentation is done here. So as we get started, I really wanted to also just say what a privilege it is to be able to gather together, since during this time of lots of global conflicts, I think it's a real privilege that we should all feel very grateful for, this extreme privilege to be able to gather together and to share and discuss art and culture. And certainly we really appreciate all of you joining us today, both in person as well as the folks who are joining us online. Our talk tonight is part of our fall series of talks, speaking with artists and creative professionals, exploring the topic of "We Will Survive," which is also supported by the Regione of Tuscany with the GiovaniSì and in the program of Toscana in Contemporanea for this year, 2024. In this series, we're trying to understand and evaluate the challenges and the threats that artists, communities, and cultural practitioners are facing in the current times and upcoming years. Certainly, it's a challenge to find creative solutions, and some of these are challenges that are external to our daily lives, but that affect and can also threaten the survival of culture and the arts, cultural diversity, communities, the environment. So this fall, we've been speaking to artists and creative professionals about the work being done to support this idea of the survival of creative communities and cultural organizations adapting to today's challenges. So today's talk with Shelley Jordon connects to this theme of the survival of the artist. How can an artist keep their vision alive, foster their creativity in the face of practical challenges, and also meeting our essential needs? So Shelley will be sharing with us some insight into the path that she has followed in her own career as an artist and an educator, including some of the challenges and opportunities that she's encountered. Just a brief nutshell biography. We could be here for hours, but just to briefly contextualize tonight's speaker, Shelley Jordon, again, is not just here tonight, but she's been here for the whole month of October as our resident artist. So it's just amazing how the month has flown by, but it's been wonderful to have Shelley here as a member of our community here in Siena. She's been very busy working in her studio, finding inspiration in the garden alongside our building, together with joining with our participants in some of our shared activities, finding resources in the community. We went to the Biblioteca Briganti together, for example. So it's been really wonderful to have you as part of our community here this month. And we're looking forward to getting to know a little bit more about your background this evening. Shelley was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and she's now based in Portland, Oregon, on the US West Coast, where she's working as a painter and a moving image artist. And her work explores the intersection between interior and exterior worlds and connections between past and present experiences. In recent projects, she has investigated the passage of time and the cycles of life and the examination of natural objects in transition and altered by unseen forces. She's been, if you want, there's some chairs up front too. So yeah, we've got some empty seats up front too. So it's nice to have a full room. Yeah, just briefly, she's been the recipient of many awards, including the Jerusalem Fellowship Award, 2 Oregon Arts Commission individual fellowship grants, 2 Ford Family Career Opportunity Grants, the Fulbright Hayes Group Travel Research Grant to Yemen and Tunisia, and an OSU Center for the Humanities Fellowship Award. Her work has been exhibited in venues across the US and internationally, including the Frye Museum in Seattle, the Wexner Center for the Fine Arts in Columbus, Ohio, the Lincoln Center in New York City, the Oregon Jewish Museum, the Portland Art Museum, the Tacoma Art Museum, and many others in the US, as well as the LDM Gallery in Florence, Italy, the Syncrasis Art Center in Empoli, Italy, and the Contemporary Art Center in Thessaloniki, Greece. So amongst many others. And also her award-winning hand-painted animations have been screened at venues in Sydney, London, Jerusalem, Milan, Los Angeles, Beirut, and Hamburg, where she won the Best Art and Animation Award at the Radar Hamburg Film Festival. So I could go on for many of her accolades, but certainly I'd like to turn the stage over to Shelley just to mention, again, as we have a few people joining us online as well for our online audience, we welcome your questions or comments, and we'll save time at the end of the presentation to be able to respond and have a bit of a Q&A at the end of today's talk. So without further ado, I will hand the microphone over to Shelley.
Well, first of all, privilege to spend the month of October in this magical, wonderful place with all these incredible people. I want to particularly thank Lisa Nonken and Irene Lupi for creating this place, but the staff, faculty, the students have been, my interactions with you all have just been so enlightening and joyful and inspiring. So thank you, and thank you all for coming. Okay, so I'm going to pack a lot of stuff into this talk, and I'm trying to keep it to about 30 minutes, and it's going to be the trajectory of my very long career, and it's going to show some images of artwork and clips, hopefully short clips of videos, and I hope you'll get a sense of the career path I've taken. As Lisa said, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and this is actually Manhattan. I went to high school in Manhattan. I've been an artist my entire life. As a kid, I was drawing on the white pages in my mother's books, and I went to an art high school and went to an art college and graduate school in art. And there's never been a question what I was going to do with my life. So as you can see in New York, there's not a lot of nature. It's not known for its nature. I moved to Portland, Oregon to take a job at the university. And Portland is a beautiful city. And it's got 40 contiguous miles, which is what, 60 kilometers, I think, of contiguous hiking trails right within the city. And every day I take a walk with my dog in the woods, and it's very beautiful. And this is some of the trees and the nature that I encounter. When I moved to Oregon, I had been doing portraits from life in New York, and I didn't know anybody when I moved to Oregon, so I started painting still lifes. And I moved to the most industrial part of Oregon that reminded me of New York. There were warehouses, there was a freight train that went by my window, and I felt much more comfortable than in a bucolic, natural setting. My paintings were still life paintings that celebrated the power and beauty of domestic spaces that were juxtaposed against exterior, primarily masculine made spaces, and celebrated the power and beauty of women's spaces. But they were also that intersection between interior and exterior worlds. I also continued doing my paintings, still life paintings in Rome, and an extended stay at the American Academy in Rome. I was there for 3 months and went to the market daily and gathered these beautiful objects and painted beautiful Rome outside my window. Over time, and I moved from this industrial area to a more residential area, the beautiful natural open spaces of Oregon began to influence the paintings and the compositions. And I was bringing nature inside. A lot of the artists we've seen this month have been bringing their work into the natural world, but I was bringing the natural world into my interior. I had a lot of success exhibiting these paintings. This is a solo exhibition at the Frye Museum in Seattle, Washington, and you can get a sense of the scale of the paintings. Some of them are 12 feet. I don't know what that is in kilometers, but it's big. It's big. I started experimenting with stop motion animation as a way to kind of explore more of an interior world, and also to expand the narrative content of my work. And it was a learning process. I had to learn a lot of software, but the thing about stop motion, hand-painted stop motion, is that you're working extremely quickly, and there was something very liberating to me about making these very fast images that then changed very quickly. One of the first animations I did was Anita's Journey. It was based on a memoir written by my husband's grandfather, who was a Jewish person living in Berlin during World War II. And there were 3 generations of Jews who miraculously survived underground in and around Berlin, Germany during the Nazi era. And this memoir documented their experience. By the time I read the memoir, my mother-in-law was already deceased, but I decided to create this piece that was based on my perception of her experience from a child's perspective. And it was very stream of conscious and very, I didn't want to include anything terrible. Anyway, miraculous, 3 generations of the family survived and moved to Portland, Oregon, which is where I met my husband. Anyway, this is just a short clip of the full video's 8 minutes. And hopefully I can figure out how to play it. Whoops, sorry. Okay, let's do it. Does it work? So once I started working with the animation, it really opened up kind of a whole world for me. And suddenly I was a filmmaker, and I was submitting these animations into films and around the world. And it was so much easier than transporting these large oil paintings. Basically, started out, I would send them in a DVD to a film festival, you know, for less than 10 euro. And now, of course, everything is online and digital. I started playing around with animated installation, and this particular piece called Morning Coffee, and it kind of, pays homage to my still life era. And I basically had musings, thoughts, stream of conscious thoughts you would have over your cup of coffee in the morning, projected onto a cup of coffee, and with a soundtrack of Morning Coffee. There's a song, Morning Coffee, that's really cool, kind of a jazz. I'm going to turn that off. This was, then I started playing around with projections onto other places. Again, exploring interior and exterior spaces. You know, is she in her own space? Should you be watching? The Venetian blinds are there. I also started playing around with multi-channel videos, and this was an exhibition in Jerusalem. And I always wanted to do a very immersive multi-channel installation, animated installation, where the viewer would enter it and be surrounded by the work. And I had an opportunity. There aren't many galleries that actually show or are equipped for video media work. And there was one in Portland, Oregon called the White Box Gallery that was actually run by the University of Oregon. And when I was in Rome, I met an incredible musician-composer, Kurt Rohde, and he and I began to collaborate on work together. He did the soundtrack for Anita's Journey, which was very beautiful. And so, but he had been creating soundtracks for my videos, and we decided we wanted to do a project together from scratch. And so he lives in San Francisco, I live in Portland, and so we applied to residencies together and then would go for a month to these different residencies to work on the project. And we went to this one that was called Montalvo, which is in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And while I was there, somebody was teaching how to make ink out of oak gall. They're like tumors on an oak tree, and you take them off the tree and you boil them and you grind them and you mix them. And so I was playing around with these organic images. Kurt collected instruments from around the world, and then he made recordings in the woods, and I made recordings in the woods, video recordings, and we decided that the piece was going to be called Lost in the Woods, and that the exhibition would be kind of a metaphor for the creative process of not knowing. Okay, because the creative process is not knowing. It's an exploration. And you're sort of asking the questions, but you don't know the answers. And so, and we were, you know, that was kind of like a parallel experience with this exhibition. And so it was a huge space, and it had 3 different spaces. And I hand-painted this mural on the wall of the woods. And we worked with some roboticists from Oregon State, which has a big engineering department, and they created these sensors. So when the viewer walked through the exhibition, it activated different sounds and animations that were projected onto this wall and to other walls. And that was one room. And then the other room was called Shinrin-yoku, which means forest bathing in Japanese. And the idea was you walk in this room and you feel like you're immersed in the forest, but there are some undertones of discomfort as well. It wasn't all like happy feelings. So I have a 2-minute video of this installation. I'm going to turn the sound back on. So I don't know if you could see that at the end, but there was actually a projection of a swimmer going back and forth into that sink that was filled with water. So that's what she was looking at. So, as I said, I always have parallel practices happening simultaneously, and I still love to paint and draw from life. It's something I just love to do. This was a radicchio that I painted here in Siena, and also pesce. And I call this series Little Things, and they're just whatever kind of strikes me, often food, sometimes little objects in my home. But things that kind of you might overlook, but really enhance your quality of life in some way. And even though they're very small, when I show them in a grid, and I have hundreds of them, so that they really fill a space and kind of feel much larger than they are. The sum is, well, I don't know, whatever. The larger than the whole. The total is larger than the whole. But also, what's interesting is that my paintings now are serial paintings. So I do multiple paintings of different subjects, and they kind of relate to the animations in that sense, where the hand-painted animations are serial paintings. And now my paintings are also kind of related in a similar way. And so, I'm always trying to bring together the animation and the painting, and this piece was really just about the fruit and vegetables rotting in my studio. And so every day I would just go into the studio and paint a little bit more as they were rotting. And this piece was actually an exhibition in Prato that Irene was included in. That was in an old meat refrigeration plant. And the exhibition was about how food is transported between its source and, ultimately the eaten. Anyway, I'm not going to show the whole thing. There's several. It gets pretty disgusting at the end. We'll leave that. But again, opportunities to show this work. So this was actually exhibited at a university campus, William Mary in West Virginia in the U.S., in the Commons, in the large common area of university for 3 months, and very large scale, obviously. I first started doing the leaves after the 2016 election in the United States, when Donald Trump was elected president, and I was filled with such despair that I couldn't paint anything anymore. I didn't know what to do with my emotion, and so I just started gathering what I thought of as these ugly dead leaves in the woods, and I brought them into my studio, and I started just pouring paint in different ways. I wasn't, no longer painting vertical, which is, how I typically painted. I was just pouring things. And then, but ultimately, instead of being ugly, I kind of found the beauty despite myself. And I got really intrigued with the leaves as a subject matter, because they really started to represent the cycles of life, the passage of time, and it's like an accelerated lifespan in a way. And as I'm painting them, they're literally dying, they're fading, they're wrinkling, they're crumbling. And so there's a real sense of urgency in capturing them. And, there's a metaphor for the urgency in what's, happening in our world, in our planet, and also kind of an urgency just in terms of, capturing something when you can. And I became sort of obsessed with these leaves. During the pandemic, I collected leaves, painted leaves, that was it. And I've kind of continued to do that. But they also represent to me, in a culture that's so obsessed with youth and beauty of youth, a way of kind of reconsidering things that are maybe past their prime, but still beautiful and still valuable. Once again, I began to find a way to combine the animation with the painting. Shortly, well, a couple of years ago, I found out that there was a glass making artist residency, and I was very interested in trying to make the leaves in glass. I was thinking about the fragility of the leaves and the fragility of glass, and that it might be an interesting combination. And this was in the Mojave Desert in Southern California, very beautiful, very dry, Eastern California. And it was kind of an amazing studio space, just this huge kind of a Quonset hut. And it was just myself and one other artist working there, and there was a kind of a master glass artist teacher. And he worked with me, and you can see those jars. That's actually, it's called glass frit, and it's kind of like powdered glass in different colors. And I worked on a flat kind of a tray that, and I painted the dry pigments, and the colors came out completely different when I baked them in the kiln. Those of you that work in ceramics understand that. And I really didn't know what was going to happen. But they're quite fragile and quite beautiful, quite delicate. And I was kind of pleased with them as a representation of these leaves that I've been exploring. Then when I had to pack them up to ship them home, it was a real job, and they didn't all make it, sadly, but that's okay. I learned. It's all learning. So I just want to show you how I exhibit these leaves. So the back center image is actually the projection, so they're quite large. This is quite a large gallery space, and then I show the still paintings alongside the large projected images. This was an exhibition in Los Angeles that I got when a curator saw my open studio at the glass residency and invited me to have a two-person show there. This was the LDN gallery in Florence, and you can see the large projection through the glass door there. That was curated by Spila Zidar. And this was shown at the Syncresis Gallery Art Center in Empoli, Italy. I was invited to have an exhibition at the Ildiko Butler Gallery at Fordham University at Lincoln Center a few years back, and the curator Lois Martin and I discussed the theme as being one about water. And I'd known her for many years, and she knew that a lot of my work addressed water or included water in a variety of ways. And so for this exhibition, I created about 25 animations that addressed water in terms of global warming, in terms of water as metaphor, in terms of water as function, included the topics of Black Lives Matter and other political issues of important of note, but I also created narratives and stories about how water is important to me. For example, going to the beaches in Brooklyn and in Queens as a child, or story about my grandfather escaping Russia and jumping in the water as the Bolsheviks were, shooting at him. And so, because I think that when you're addressing large political issues, in order for them to be important, they have to be personal. People have to understand them on a personal level. So for that exhibition, I did a residency in southeastern Oregon in the high desert. This is a place called Summer Lake that literally the lake evaporates in the summer, and it becomes like this. It was pretty phenomenal. And I did a series of paintings that responded to that, and then also to the incredible skies and landscape. I also did a residency in Key West, Florida, which is the southernmost tip of the United States. It's gorgeous. It's got turquoise water. I swam with turtles. when I wasn't in my studio creating artwork. And in Key West, I gathered these things called sea whips, which are part of a kelp underwater forest that I then painted in different ways. And then I did another residency in Washington State on the Pacific Ocean, Long Beach Peninsula, which was spectacular. Whoops. And this is, just to give you a sense of when I'm doing the videos, this is kind of how I work. I do sometimes 100, 200, 1,000 images on one piece of paper, and it gets pretty messy. But that's kind of the way it is. It's point, shoot, point, shoot. And this, I believe, is a video of the exhibition installation. It was called Still Streaming, play on words. And then work from that exhibition was also shown at the Fairbanks Gallery at Oregon State University. And you can see it's a very different experience. This was a much more contemplative, quiet space. And Kurt designed the music for each of these videos, but he designed them in a way so that they can all be shown simultaneously, and that even though they're never shown, you're never seeing or hearing them the same at the same time, it's always harmonious and it always works. Whoops. Oh. I wasn't going to show this, but this is my grandfather, who was a New York City motorcycle policeman in Coney Island. Sorry. Okay, so I'm going to end with a couple of years ago, I was commissioned to do the animation for an opera in San Francisco at the San Francisco Opera House. And it was a beautiful opera based on a book of poetry by Donna Massini. It was called 4:30 Movie, and it was about her sister's diagnosis and ultimate demise of cancer. But the book of poems was written through the lens of watching movies together. And in New York in the 60s and 70s, there was after school every day at 4:30, there was a movie called the 4:30 Movie that everybody watched. The kids would come home from school, have their snack, and watch the movie. And she named the book 4:30 Movie, and I understood all of the references in the book. And anyway, I didn't get to meet the poet until the dress rehearsals, and I was worried about what she would think because the stories were so personal. But fortunately, she loved it. And I have a 1-minute compilation of the animations that were in the opera, and I'm going to play it for you. That's the end. Hopefully it's going to play. So here I am in the Siena Art Institute, inspired by the garden and all the people here. And I invite you to come to my open studio and see what I've done this past month. So thank you. Domandi.
Yes, we have also a few. Let me just turn off the volume here. So we have a few questions that have also come in from our online audience, but I don't know if our in-person audience has any immediate questions, or we could start with some of our online questions. But yes.
Shelley, your work is visually very engaging, but I think also the audio and the music plays a role. Can you talk about that intersection?
Absolutely. I feel like the collaboration with Kurt has really enhanced the experience for the viewer, so that it's a much more experience. And we work in a very sort of intuitive way together. For example, on the residencies, I would do work on the animation, let's say for the still streaming show. I would do a passage during the day, and then I would give it to him. Create music at night, and then I would take that back to my studio and play it, respond to that, and give it back to him. So it was a really wonderful, responsive and interactive collaboration, and I'm so grateful for that collaboration and that ability to really expand what I'm doing. And I've discovered, and it's interesting because as a painter, and probably as a poet or a writer, other disciplines, you're very much alone and isolated, and you kind of protect that space as part of being a painter. But I found that I really enjoyed working with somebody else and having that creative synergy. So yeah, it's been fantastic.
In it was the second or third projection gallery you had shown. You used a Japanese term to describe the ambiance. What was that term?
Shinrin-yoku. It actually means forest bathing, and it's a term that they use when people take a walk in the woods to kind of clear their head and feel better. They spend time in nature and heal through that experience. And so I took that title and used it for this space, and it was kind of a play because in a way, so having the projection of the swimmer in the sink, that was a way of like bringing it back home, like you're brushing your teeth, you're looking in the sink, and you can feel like you're doing forest bathing. But there was also a lot of tension in some of the videos, like they were, sometimes the camera was upside down or very jarred. So, being in the woods can be very healing and bucolic, but sometimes it can be scary. You can be lost, and it can be unnerving. So I was kind of playing around with that. It's not just all wonderful, which it mostly is, it can also be uncomfortable. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. So you have been continuing your project on the medium since 2016, and you have done wonderful works of faith here in Siena. And I'm wondering if Siena, as a place of to create art, does it give any difference or similarities between the works the series that you have created here and the past series?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, it's been really interesting because I wasn't really intending to paint leaves necessarily, but I was really struck by the fact that the city has these walls, and the trees are mostly outside the city walls, and you have to kind of look for them. And it made me really think about the relationship of people people living in Siena and their relationship to nature, as opposed to painting leaves in, let's say, Portland, Oregon, where there's tons of trees and the leaves are everywhere, you know, that it's kind of more selective. So I started to think about the leaves as a way of sort of mapping a city and mapping a place and telling a story about a place. And it's been interesting talking with some Italian people who have some very interesting responses and perspectives on the leaves, different than American conversations I've had. So I've really enjoyed that.
Do you also think your work as a representation of the stages of human life?
Wait, can you speak up? I can't.
Do you also think when you're painting, representing in the stages of human life, the passing of through the stages of human life?
I'm not sure I
The
understand.
stages of female life?
Human
Human life, okay.
Oh, do I see it that way?
Yes. Do you think also about that when you're painting?
Am I thinking about my body or people, human bodies as I'm?
Yes, as the leaves as a representation of human life.
Oh, there's
the
definitely, yeah.
creations.
It's absolutely a metaphor. Absolutely. Things are wrinkling and they're discoloring and they're getting smaller, which is very much like an acceleration of the human body aging, only it's happening, you know, really, really quickly. Yes, I do think about it. But again, I'm trying to find the beauty in it. So it's not just negative. It's not just, you know, downhill fast. Does that answer your question?
A question that came in from our, so we have a few questions from our online viewers. At the start, some of the initial work that you showed, the animations and paintings, there was a comment from Jeff who was saying that they create a tremendous sense of home. And if you could perhaps comment on this sort of implicit theme of home, perhaps, in some of the initial works you had shared?
Well, I think that I was definitely, or a lot of my animations are very personal, and they are stories. I mine stories from my personal life, and so I have to have an emotional connection to the subject matter in order to create artwork around it. I'm a very intuitive artist, more than some of the more conceptual artists who I completely respect. It's just not who I am. So absolutely, they connect to my personal history, to people I care about. And again, if I don't care about it, I just can't get myself to do it. You know, if I can't find a real emotional connection. So yes, that's absolutely, I hope that's,
Great.
yeah.
And we had sort of two questions from Miriam, who was writing in saying, one question was if you have ever worked with dancers, perhaps in the opera context?
I have not, but I have thought that it would be an amazing thing to do, especially with the projection. And yes, I have been thinking about that. And again, as I really enjoy this expansive, collaborative endeavors, that is something I have been thinking about, but have not yet done.
So I loved your quirky Venetian blind dancer. She was fantastic. She was very cheeky. So another follow-up question from Miriam was asking about the animations, just on a practical level. How does it work if you sell an animation to a collector or institution? How does one buy, if that's at all possible with an animation?
Yeah. It is complicated. You make limited editions. And you know, there are ways to kind of encrypt them so that people can't make copies. And I don't, truthfully, I'm not marketing my work for sales, for commercial use. Earlier on, when I was painting the large scale still lifes, I showed with many galleries and, you know, was selling a lot of them. And now I'm more interested in making the work and people seeing the work. You know, you can watch most of my videos on Vimeo or YouTube or my website. So it is complicated, but it can be done. Yeah.
And there was another more big picture question that came in
from Asia, who's asking, just in general, what is some advice that you would give to a young artist? The idea of surviving, trying to survive. So how, if you have any just more general thoughts on that topic?
Absolutely.
Okay. So first of all, if you want to make money, don't be an artist. Become a dentist or something, or an accountant. I don't know. You become an artist because you have to be an artist. You don't become an artist. You make art because you are an artist, and that's what you need to do. You find ways to support the art, and you keep trying to be as authentic as an artist as you can be. And try not to worry so much about making money from it. If the work develops and is strong, it will find its audience, I promise you. But you have to be really committed, really disciplined, and you have to have a really thick skin because you're going to get a lot of rejection. But if it's what you need to do, you just need to do it. So I, you know, started out actually as a freelance illustrator in New York. I worked for the New York Times, for Fortune magazine. I did book covers, album covers. Great, you know, I mean, I made money. I loved doing it, but I always wanted to make my own work. And then I decided to go into teaching as a way to support my work, to support my practice, and as a way to give back. So I was fortunate. I had a great, you know, I've had a great teaching career that allowed me the time to and support to pursue my own work. But my advice is, and I was talking to Cece about this the other day because she was worried about how she's going to make a living. First of all, you have to have the work first. If the work is not ready, if the work's not there, you can't be worrying about what you're going to do with it, because you have to have that body of work, whether it's fine art, whether it's illustration or graphic design. You have to have work that's as good as you can make it, that represents you as well as it can. And I believe it will find its place, but you have to really work at it. And if you're not committed, don't do it. That's my advice. If you're not all in, do something else and just do it for your own enjoyment, which is fine. Be an art lover, an art supporter, but it takes, you know, it takes sacrifice. You have to find a life partner who's on board, because this is a big deal in your life. It's like having another lover, you know, who is very demanding of your time and your energy and your everything. And, you know, so it takes commitment and sacrifice, but I can't imagine having lived any other life. I can't imagine. I felt like I had no choice, you know. Art has been my compass. The art led me to everything that I've done in my life. It was because of the art.
It's a wonderful response. We're to also continue the conversation over snacks, refreshments for our open studio as well. Just while we're together here, right? Well, while we're still together, though, before we go different directions, first of all, let me thank again Shelley for being so generous with your candid comments and insight into your background. We've all gotten a chance to know you, who had the privilege of being together during this month-long residency. but it's really interesting to see more of your backgrounds and understand also that the context that the work has come from. So thank you so much. And yes, and certainly the evening does not end here. For our in-person audience, we have the open studio of Shelley's work is on our upper floor, which you can get to either going around the building to the back door or down the hall through our clay arts room in the basement brings you to the back staircase. But down the hallway and downstairs in our ceramic studio, we have a lot of work by our international group of young artists who are here for our autumn together. So there's lots of interesting work in progress to explore as well. So as a way to help you understand a bit about the context of some of the work that has been created here, we're also very delighted to be able to share with you all a brief glimpse into our hidden garden project, which it's currently dark outside, so you can't see so easily in the dark, but we have a short video which will just provide a little glimpse into the initial transformation of this hidden garden, the Giardino Nascosto, which we are creating within the context of the Let's Art program, which has support from the Monte Paschi Fondazione, and we're also grateful to the Toscana in Contemporanea call and the Culture Moves Europe program, who has enabled several young artists in residence to be able to be here with us this autumn as well, creating works that will be enriching the Giardino Nascosto. So we very much also invite everyone to come back to join us for the official inauguration of these autumn works in progress. We'll have our fall show on Saturday, December 7th, so we hope our visitors can join us for that as well. But we have this short video that will provide a glimpse into some of the spaces outdoors.
Ready? Oops, is this it? No. Oh, whoops, no, it's this. Do we need to put that back?
Noi siamo arrivati qua con il SAT nel 2019, abbiamo trovato uno spazio bellissimo, uno spazio naturale, già di per sé veramente prezioso, e questa scoperta ci ha automaticamente fatto sentire responsabili sul dover diventare un po' i custodi di questo bellissimo patrimonio naturale. Gestione è nato poi il progetto del Giardino Nascosto. Il Giardino Nascosto è il nostro modo di accogliere tutta la comunità intendendo anche le persone anziane, le persone sorde, le persone sordocieche, le persone cieche, nel rispetto della natura e anche nel rispetto di altri criteri, dei criteri di design e dei criteri di accessibilità, oltre ovviamente a quelli di base di sostenibilità.
The first thing that we did when I joined the team working on the garden was to reevaluate the shape of the path that was already planned to make it more accessible and more easy to walk through, but also to open up certain areas to create enough space for a group sitting installation. Redesigning and reshaping the built environment, beginning from previously excluded communities, is not always easy. Here in the Giardino Nascosto, we try to find certain balances between environmental sustainability, aesthetical value, and accessibility of certain communities that we are in touch with. And this was an interdisciplinary process that needs a lot of effort, but at the end offers something unique.